Good morning, everyone. Thank you for starting the day out with me. I'm Jenna Stauffer. Now, the public has been and remains intensely interested in the subject of psychopaths. This morning, we're going to hear from Sandra L. Brown. She is the founder of the Institute for Relational Harm Reduction and Public Pathology Education. Now, after spending 25 years in the field, working hundreds of countless face-to-face time hours with victims of psychopaths, Sandra wanted to know who the most disordered people on the planet wanted as their partner. She became interested in knowing if there were specific traits that they targeted. The results that she found were fascinating.
Is there a common profile that women share who fall for these psychopaths, or I shouldn't say fall, get trapped by these psychopaths?
Mm-hmm. Well, there is, and it's been a long time coming. 25 years of working in this field, I kept seeing the same type of person over and over again, and it didn't make any sense to me. We work mostly in an outpatient setting that is not a community agency, so we're, a private practice. And so people that were coming in were not necessarily people from shelters or things like that. And our average client had a bachelor's degree or higher. And were professional women, doctors, attorneys, every walk of life, super professional, and in their jobs did such a great job. And then there's this subsector, this thing going on in their relationships in which they might be super astute in their career, and in the interpersonal part of that, they were drawn into a relationship, with a psychopath. And so when you look at that on the surface, you think, how can that be? How can there be a teacher, a therapist, a doctor, an attorney, on one hand, that is so proficient and skilled, and on the other hand, end up in a relationship with such profound pathology. And when I went to research that, there was no research. There was absolutely none. There was all this research on women, for instance, in domestic violence. Sort of the profile of that did not fit the profile of the women that we were seeing. And not all psychopaths are violent, and so those statistics really weren't helping us. And I kept looking and looking sort of for the profile of women who love psychopaths, and there was nothing. And so several years ago, we did the first research project in looking at, is there something there? Given the nature of psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, what they do is not random. They target, they are predator based, and so they have someone that works for them. And so who is that person? Again, if we go back to public pathology education, if we can figure out who they target, we can know who's at risk.
Considering that they are predatory based, meaning what they do is not by accident, that we began to ask the question, is there a person, are there traits, who are they targeting, who are they attracted to, who works for them in terms of what they are seeking to get out of a relationship. And so that's sort of what motivated us to begin to look and test women who have been in relationships with psychopaths. And it's kind of, it's a hard thing to do, because you don't ever want to imply that a victim has done anything that has warranted that. And that is not what we are saying. We are looking at a predator and working backwards, trying to figure out if we can identify the traits that they are interested in, we will know where prevention education needs to go. We'll know who they are hunting and who they are targeting. I mean, they do the same thing in criminal profiling. Mm-hmm. If a serial killer has, killed someone, they begin looking at putting together a profile and the traits of the person that they targeted to know who they're going to target again. Why not now? Mm-hmm. Why not do that with the most predatory people on the planet? They don't have to kill people in order to do profound damage to people that they are in relationships with. So we sort of took that, we call it pathology profiling mm-hmm. instead of criminal profiling. And we began to look at, are there commonalities in the women that they pick? Are there any kind of trait elevations, anything that we can begin to explore deeper? And so the first go round, we tested about 75 women who had been in relationships with people in that low conscience spectrum. And what we found were trait elevations, that there were personality traits that were sort of off the Richter scale. If you were going to look at them on a bell curve, I mean, there was no bell curve. It looked like the Rocky Mountains coming off the end of the graph paper. I remember sending it to the creator of the instrument, and he said, "Holy cow, that's not what I expected to see." And so what we found were elevations in traits like hyper empathy, really high levels of empathy, high levels of tolerance, very high in what we call relationship investment, meaning that they are highly emotionally invested in their relationships. They're not, casual kinds of relationship. High levels of cooperation, trust, loyalty. Trust being what we call blind trust. That they may not know that person from Adam, and or may have known them a brief amount of time, and yet put all their eggs, if you will, in someone's basket without necessarily proof of that person is trustworthy. Same thing with loyalty. We call it insane loyalty, in which even when there's violations that happen as the relationship progresses, they don't tend to respond to loyalty violations the way that people who don't have these trait elevations. And so there were 26, I believe, trait elevations. Mm-hmm. And so when you take that as a snapshot, you begin to look at someone that has high empathy, high tolerance, high relationship, high trust, this is like a cocktail of personality for inevitable harm. And then you take a low conscienced partner who looks for people who has these kinds of traits, and you have these relationships of inevitable harm. And so that was our first go round, and looking at utilizing this one instrument to see. And so Now we're going back through again, and in partnership with Purdue University, we are doing it again with another instrument. And from all sort of predictions that we're seeing as things are beginning to come in, is that we're going to get the same outcome, that there really is a personality profile of people that psychopaths tend to target.
We'll be hearing much more from Sandra L. Brown this month on Good Morning Florida Keys. When I return this morning, I'll be joined with clinical hypnotist Helen Basinger. Stay with me.